Hi, I am Cesar Santos. Let's talk about the flesh color palette as presented by the English painter of the 18th century, Thomas Bardwell. But before we interpret his book, let me get my glasses on and we're ready. Thomas Bardwell wrote his practical treatise on painting in oil colors in 1756. Find the link for the book in the description below. This is the first book published in Britain giving a detailed and comprehensive set of instruction on the method of painting in oils. He stated that he discovered his method by studying the art of the past, and to follow his footsteps, let's study him. Thomas Bardwell's system has influenced my palette a great deal. And even though my palette and the way I studied was based on his system, I've made some changes from the way he presents the palette and the colors he mentions, but I want to go over and show you the way I interpret his book and the way he presents it. So I have prepared a palette using his colors, the colors that he presents in his book, and from the front, starting with the white, all the way with the virgin tints to the black, and here in the middle are the premixed, the tints and the shades that he talks about in order to facilitate the process of painting the flesh. The first color on his palette is flake white. Flake white is a lead white. It's a more transparent white with less body. He doesn't mention titanium white because titanium white was discovered in 1821. 100 years later is when it became mass produced, around 1916. I use titanium white because it has more body. It's more opaque, so in the under layers it's great to have that solid white as a foundation. White comes forward with warm colors with yellows and red and recedes with greens and blues, and that's a property of his first color in the palette, the white. The next color he mentions is light ochre. It's a very friendly yellow for the flesh color. Now yellows are stronger with reds and weaker with greens and blues. If we think about it, yellow is a color we use on the light side. So when we come to select our yellows, it's better if they already come in a lighter value in that tube. Then comes the light red color. He mentions that specific name, and there is a tube by Winsor & Newton that I use that is called light red, and that's the color I'm talking about. Now that color mixed with white, he says that is the most perfect complexion for the general flesh. Light red is a clean and kindly working color. It is too strong for the white, so you have to be careful when adding light red to white, because if you put too much it will grow darker and it won't be usable for the flesh anymore. He mentions vermilion as one of the reds he uses. I have replaced it with canyon red. This color is an opaque, strong color used mainly on the light areas. It's not so great for glazing, because for glazing you need a more transparent color. The next red he mentions is called lake, which is a deep color with not such a strong body, and is great for glazing. That's the way he explains it. So I have come to interpret that lake color as if it was alizarin crimson, permanent alizarin crimson. Another red he mentions is carmine, which is a middle color between that lake that I just mentioned and vermilion, something in between that. Carmine is not such an opaque color nor as transparent as alizarin crimson, so it's in between these two, the canyon red and the alizarin. Indian red is the strongest red he uses. It has a lot of body, it's not transparent at all, so it's not good for glazing, and it strengthens the blacks. So if you want to have a very warm, dark area, this is the red to mix with the black. And it will be weaker with white, becoming cold and purpley. After all these reds, he talks about brown pink. Brown pink is a color that is very transparent, and it doesn't have a lot of opacity, it doesn't have a lot of body to it. And he says never to mix it with the flesh colors. It's good for shadows and should never be used alone in the early stages. Other than brown pink, he mentions burnt umber. Burnt umber is a warm brown, very strong color of great use in the hair and in the shadow areas. He talks about two blues, the ultramarine blue and Prussian blue. Ultramarine is the warm blue, the finest blue actually, and it's great for glazing, while the Prussian blue is the one we mix with the yellow to create the greens. Prussian blue should never be used in the flesh, and is the color we use to make the greens with the yellows. Someone with light blue eyes will be the perfect color to use. Finally, on his palette we have Ivory Black. Ivory Black is a transparent black, kind of on the cool side. It mixes kindly with all the other colors. Actually, in the flesh you can use it too. It is a true shade for blue, and when mixed with Indian red gives you a very nice warm accent color for the use in the shadows. These are the colors straight from the tube, the pigments that he mentions in order to paint the flesh colors. Now remember, the flesh is a color that you cannot really point at because it's a variation of values from light to dark, at the same time a variations of hues and temperature. That's why it's very complicated to paint the flesh. Going towards yellow, maybe sometimes towards green, pink, and that is the combination that we have to discover by playing with these subtleties of colors. Next week, I'm gonna talk about the tints and shades that he uses, combining the colors that I just gave you in order to balance the flesh colors. In the description below, I will have the links to the colors as I interpret them from reading the book. It's been a little difficult to interpret this book, and I have heard other artists interpreting the book in a little different way, because it's not such a clear description of what he wants you to do. He's leaving out a lot of things that maybe were obvious at that time in 1756, but now we're missing so much information that we have to kind of put things together like a puzzle to be able to interpret such a clear book according to him. Let's wrap this video up. I'll continue with this book in the next video I post. I'll go over the shades and the tints just like Thomas Bardwell proposed.